Welcome everyone to another episode of Birdsong. My name is Kayuda, and for episode 34 of this show, I am delighted to bring you this conversation that I had with Itzhak Beery. Itzhak is an internationally recognized shamanic teacher, healer, speaker, community activist, and author of 3 Amazon bestseller books, which are The Gift of Shamanism, Visionary Power, Ayahuasca Dreams, and Journeys to the Other Realms, Shamanic Transformations, True Stories of the Moment of Awakening, and Shamanic Healing, Traditional Medicine for the Modern World. Itzhak was born in an Israeli Kibbutz, and he grew up to have a fine art career and was the owner of an award-winning boutique ad agency in New York. However, a midlife crisis led to his transformation from a skeptical atheist and business executive into a passionate believer in shamanism and spirit, which brought him to be more aligned with his life purpose. And for over 20 years now, Itzhak has been bridging the physical and spiritual and sharing the practical wisdom that both his indigenous and Western teachers have bestowed and entrusted upon him. He was initiated into the circle of 24 Yachuks of Imbabura by his Quechua teacher in Ecuador and by Amazonian Canamare Pahe in Brazil. Itzhak is the founder of shamanportal.org, the Andes Summit, and co-founder of the New York Shamanic Circle, and he is on various major global spiritual center faculties. And to top off that bio, Itzhak received the Ambassador for Peace Award from the Universal Peace Federation and the UN. So let's leave it at that for now. Let's get into this conversation with myself and Itzhak Beery. I trust you will find value in this show to carry with you on your own path forward. Yeah. Well, look, let's continue kicking things off then by talking about this one theme that I love talking about or inviting my guests to share about, which is the sacred. And I ask all of my guests this and invite them to share some of their reflections in regards to honoring the sacred or remembering the sacred. And some of my guests like to share a prayer or a poem or a song or an incantation or an invocation, while others simply feel called to speak about what the sacred means to them and how they honor the sacred in daily life. So I would love to offer that up to you, Itzhak, to share some of your reflections or musings or whatever comes to mind and heart when we're speaking about the sacred.
Well, in Western civilization, we look at sacred as something sacred, as something that is outside of life, that becomes sacred. But in indigenous cultures, at least the one that I met, in the Amazon, or in Brazil and Ecuador, and in South America and other places, they don't have that, because they truly believe that everything is sacred. And so they don't have something that is like, this is a sacred, this is a sacred that, or, where there is an attachment to an object, because they truly believe that every moment is a sacred moment, and every tree is a sacred tree, and every pot is a sacred pot, and every knife is a sacred knife, and every food that you eat is a sacred. And so the whole idea of sacredness, in many ways, I think that it separates us from truly value what we have, the object that we have, the people that we have, the land that we have, the mountains that we have, and make them what outside of us, where the whole work is about being close to them, intimate with them, and value them, and to give gratitude to every of those. In the Quechua tradition, it's called Huaca, or a sacred object. And the sacred object it's not necessarily just a mountain or a tree or a special stone, or it is a Huaca is everything that you make it special, and by you making it special, it give power back to you. So you are empowering the object that empowering you back. And that's the whole essence of the altar, which is a thing that is important to talk about, because when you have an altar, which is symbolizing basically your world, right? It's symbolizing your universe. You set up the altar as a manifestation of your cosmos in a way, and you create it in with objects that represent the feminine and the masculine energies of the world, the unity of all of it. I'm not going to show you mine, but it needs to be. But it's by my side, because when you make those objects that have truly not necessarily what we call sacred, but if you are making them sacred, they give power back to you, and so that empower me to do the work that I do. It's like you need to put the electricity or the current in the battery of your iPhone, right? And then the iPhone give you back the information that you need. And it's the same relationship. You need to charge those objects and make them sacred so they can give you back your energy. So I don't know if it's answer your question, but I think that for all of us, it's so important to understand that every food, every stone, every fruit, every drum or anything that you are using is sacred. And it's sacred because it's a creation of the great mystery. And it's because you recognize it and you give it gratitude. And that gratitude, or that relationship, the intimate relationship with these objects, create the sacredness. And at the same time, because in shamanism, there's no one thing. It's always, there's one side and the other.
Sure.
And at the same time, you have to let go of it. So it's not about owning them. It's not about collecting them. And it's not about making them so important that life is not important. Because you can just have another object that you can make it sacred. And it's interesting because my second book, I interviewed more than 40 people who are doing shamanic work. Many people who are very well known and in the shamanic field.
And this was Shamanic Transformations, right, Itzhak?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to know from them is that moment of sacredness, the moment of illuminating moment, the time, a moment of awakening, of where the lenses on their eyes changes. It changed the color of the way they see the world. And I thought it was like a great idea because I was very curious about that. I wanted to know, because for me, I had a few moments like that that I had, in different places, on the mountains, in the sweat lodge, in the Amazon, doing plant medicine, many different opportunities to experience that aha moment. So I really want to know, what the big guys, So I asked him to tell me the story, but from a personal point of view. And I received quite a few beautiful stories. And if you read this book, it's like really enlightening, and it's beautiful. But I got also an entry from a person who's from Mexico who wrote this thing, and he says that he's very sorry, but he doesn't have one moment of enlightenment, because in their tradition, every moment is a moment of enlightenment. And I think it's a huge difference between the way they see the world and the way we do. Many people in the Western cultures or societies, when the veil come down and they're starting to look for that moment of enlightenment, they have to go to India and sit on the mountain or sit in a cave, or go to do the El Camino in Spain, or they do all of those extreme experiences to experience the moment of enlightenment, which is kind of like the height of their life experience.
Like a peak experience, yeah.
And there's so many people who spend life looking for it, and they're so disappointed in their life because they never experienced this moment of enlightenment. And if you hold that idea that every moment is the moment of enlightenment, if you just pay attention, if you just notice that that every moment is a moment of opportunity of changing the way you see the world, the way you bring your consciousness into it, your awareness, that you see that we are all connected, that you are all one. And you don't have to wait for one big moment. And actually, this one big moment, that it's postponed, that idea of enlightenment. So it's in the same way, it's very close to what you ask about the sacredness, because everything is sacredness. There's no one object that is not sacred, because the sacredness is what's useful for you. It's what makes your life worth living or help you in your life, and that is sacred.
Mm. Yes, perhaps that's one of the secrets to life. It is realizing the sacred in the ordinary or the mundane. And when you're talking about releasing attachments to what it is that we might place more significance or sacredness on, we were talking about my daughter earlier. She is one of the greatest teachers for this for me. I'll be working on a feather fan, for example, some wings maybe from a barn owl or from a kookaburra or whatever it is, maybe a stone that I've had for 5 or 6 years, and it's traveled all the way through South America, and I've charged it up on the top of Machu Picchu and all the rest of it. And she'll just come along and she'll rip a feather out while I'm not watching, or she'll grab the rock and drop it on the ground. And it's in that moment I have this split second where I want to have an outburst and be like, no, not my sacred item. But at the same time, it's putting it in context. It's like, what's really more sacred? Is it this item that I've carried with me and I've placed all this significance on? Or is it my daughter who's exploring and curious about the world, and her beautiful soul just wants to come in and play with everything that daddy has? So what a great teaching from my daughter there.
It reminds me of an event that we had many years ago in 1996 or 7 in Ecuador. We went to visit one of these very famous, well-known shamans on a trip. We had a group there, and we came to his village, and he had a conversation with us, and we were like totally in awe, because that person is considered to be the Dalai Lama of the Andes by the Dalai Lama, and the spiritual leader. And it's the first time I was in South America, and but we were all like on holding our breath. And he invited us into this big kiva, the place where he was doing the healing. It's a circular place, and in the middle there was a big fire, and we all got naked, and he was doing the ceremonies, and we waited one at a time. And all of a sudden, the door opened, and his son came biking on a tricycle and singing. And he was like doing circles all around us, and I was with my then mind, I would say, how this amazing shaman allow his son to destroy our sacred moment. And then of course, I translated to our value, and I said, it cost me thousands of dollars to pay for the trip. I paid him so much money for the healing, and he allowed that little child to run around. And the more the child ran around, the more angry I became. I was like, whew. And then the child stopped, and he went down to the father altar, and he picked up the bells. And he started to play with the bells, and then with the feathers. And then he was asking questions. And his father did not flinch. He just continued with the thing, And I felt like totally disrespect. How can he do it to us? And then the kids continued to play with it. And the father continued to do the healing for this guy who was totally naked in front of all of us. And all of a sudden, the kid just got bored and he left. And something changed in me. I started to feel shame for myself, that if we want people to learn what's sacred, we have to allow them to experience it. If he had forbade his son to play with it or be in the room where the smoke and the fire and the limpias and all of that event happened, how would he feel comfortable with it later on in his life? And I started to think about the way I brought my children, which is always I say, no, don't do that, because it's, we have this society taboos and all those rules and regulations. And I decided to change, and I started to raise. I have 3 kids. I totally, when I came back, I totally changed the way I educated them or lived with them in a way, because I realized that we are a society of no's. We are a society that says, don't do that because this, because do that. Can you do that? It's a guilt and guilt and guilt. And we raising children that feel disconnected from their own spontaneities, from their own involvement with nature, the intimacy of the fire, of the smoke, of the experiences, the creativity in the world. So there's what you go back to the sacredness. It was a sacred moment. It's just I didn't realize that.
Yeah, powerful medicine right there. Absolutely. And like you were touching on before, we often make these or create these containers where we enter ceremony and then we close down the ceremony after, and then we go back to ordinary life. But for me, if there's something that the plants and spirit and the mystery has passed on to me, it's that Every moment is a moment for prayer and for connection and for recognizing that all is sacred. Every moment. Like you say, it's just about that pause of remembering and taking the moment to listen and become aware.
Well, I think that you're touching on something that is very important, because when you do plant medicine or you do ceremonies with the elders in many different countries of the world, and or you're in around your altar, and how do you take that sacredness? How do you take that moment of being connected and being together with? How do you take it into your business life, to your family life, to going on a bus, on a car, and in regular life, in daily life? And I think that that's really the test. How do you bring that, what you call sacredness, to everyday life? Because that's the test. The test is not to be sacred. And I want to tell you maybe another story. Every New Year, there is a meditation organization, in very famous one in New York, that everybody goes there. Not everybody, but a lot of spiritual people go there to meditate for the New Year. And so you sit there for a few hours and you meditate and you sing and you meditate and you kind of like reflect on the new life and to change the. So I only went once, because that one moment, we were sitting there, and you really feel good about yourself because you are really smart and spiritual. And then the moment it ended, all those people who were just sitting there for hours and meditating were rushing to the elevator, and they were pushing. They were rushing. They were not waiting. They were not giving. They did not allow other people to pass them on. They became so. They became so. How should I say?
Well, it's
What
certainly
did
not.
you? What did you do all these 4 hours, if not to develop that your compassion,
Yeah.
or your patient, or your sacredness? How can you do that? How can you transform so fast from a spiritual entity into pushy New Yorkers so fast? There's no in between. And so I think that for the way I see it is, it's their way. It's a way to maybe experience the sacredness, but the trick is not to keep it in those holy places, but to bring it into holy life, to the daily life, to the people that you meet on the street, to the community, to the family.
Yeah. I just spoke with John Lockley yesterday. You know John? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
One of the things that he said is we were talking about reconnecting to the wilderness, both internally and externally. And arguably the whole point of why we do a lot of this work. It's, yeah, shamanism is about self-responsibility and personal power, but it's got to translate out into being of service to community, to family, to loved ones, to the greater web of life. And he was talking about going into yoga studios, and as a very basic example, seeing all of the plants that are dying and are never watered. So I guess it's just, I guess another example on a similar kind of line of what you're talking about.
Yes, because I think that we have a separation between nature and us. I mean, we live in a society that is, since the Industrial Revolution, people learn to be afraid of nature, to protect themselves from nature, or to try to control nature because of that. And instead of merge with or be with, like when you are in the Amazon and it's rainy, we immediately looking for for the umbrellas, or we are running into the homes or houses so to protect ourselves. And for them, it's just rain. So they are part of the rain. I mean, especially when you're on a canoe for for hours. So you just accept that you're part of the rain. You're part of the nature. You are not really making such a big deal out of that, you know. Or if an ant or a scorpio bites you, so it's part of that natural exchange that you have there. So it's reflective on all of us, you know. So we also the way Western culture is about a separation from you and community, that you can do it by yourself. You don't really need community. You don't need family. You don't need a tribe. You can do it by yourself. You know, that's the American dream. You're gonna ride on a horse and go into the distances, into the horizon, and you're going to conquer the land, and you're going to build it yourself. You're going to fight all these Indians, and you're going to make it yourself. You know, the whole idea of the male cowboy idea, that power, but he doesn't need it. It doesn't belong to. It doesn't even try to merge with nature or be with nature. You know, so it's a. It might serve some purposes before, but it's definitely not a good dream. It's actually what we see here in our culture now is that's that nightmare of breaking down of community, breaking down the connection with nature, the breakdown of family, of mostly the breaking down of the concept of we responsible for the us, you know, for the community, where it's so important. You know, like the difference is that in the pandemic that we have now, when it arrived into the Amazon, the family in the Sequoia tribe, which is the places, the Psychopai that I go to, what they did is they went into the jungle and they immediately collected medicinal plants, and they cooked a lot. And then they went from village to village, and they gave it to every village, every family. So because some of those families don't really know anymore the power of the plants. And they did that for a while, so they can heal the people from the COVID. They didn't just drink it themselves, and they didn't care about the other people, because they knew that if the other people are sick, they will be sick too. So they had this responsibility to share it with all of those hundreds of people there on a daily basis, because they felt responsibility for others. Where for us is, I want to be responsible for myself, and I don't care about the other people. This is where it all comes down to.
Yeah, and to come back to something you were talking about earlier, there was 4 words that came to my mind, and 4 very simple words, but it's a philosophy that I've carried with me from many, many years ago. Somewhere in Peru is where I picked it up, and those 4 words are no lluvia, no vida, no rain, no life. It's so simple, but like you say, we often go outside, or people often go outside, and we'll say, oh, what a horrible day. It's raining, it's overcast, it's thunderous. And I'll be like, what a magnificent day. This is beautiful. And it's just looking for those perspective changes and trying to find the medicine in all things.
Well, you know, one time we were going to the Amazon to Rio Negro in Brazil. And a woman, I used to organize these trips, and this woman came and she said that she wants her money back. And Ipupiara, the shaman that I worked with and studied with, asked her, so honey, why do you want your money back? And she said, because I paid a lot of money to go on vacation, and I didn't pay money for 2 weeks of rain. So I want my money back because it wasn't a vacation. And he said, honey, where are you? She said, I'm in the rainforest. So he told her, rain, forest, rain, forest. In the rainforest, it rains.
Maybe she might have been better to pick the sun forest, but maybe a sun forest is a desert. I'm not sure.
Well, that's the desert in Peru,
Yeah,
maybe.
maybe so.
She went on the wrong trip. But
Yeah.
no, but the interesting part for her was, yes, she associated vacation with sun, with beauty, because that's what she wants. And she deserved to have what she wants. She would not see what nature offered, and was the beauty of the rainforest. It's beautiful when it's rain. It's not comfortable, maybe for some people, but if you are fighting it, it's never going to be beautiful. But if you are with it, and you hear the sound of the rain falling, and you see the flashlights of the lightning and the thunder, and you associate it with the Yara and Tupana, the two forces of the goddesses of water, the gods of creation, fighting within themselves and making love. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that connect you to and then you see the river rising and life coming up with it, and that's what we lost in our modern society.
Mm. Yeah, and I think you make a good point there as well when we're talking about this beauty path, the path of beauty. It doesn't necessarily mean that things are going to be comfortable or pleasurable. They might be incredibly uncomfortable and painful, but it's being able to reorient our perspective, our perception again, to develop more of a connection to nature and all of the beauty that is inherent, because full circle again, all of life is a gift and all of life is sacred. And Western society has been indoctrinated to just become so disconnected from the elements and the sacredness of life.
Yep.
And actually, there's something that I wanted to touch on with you from one of the articles that you recently wrote a few months ago, The Bitter Side of Ayahuasca. So this will tie into what we're speaking about. So in this article, from memory, you're essentially exploring this idea that ayahuasca is maybe often seen as a gift from spirit, or maybe a secretion from earth as a self-organizing, self-regulating, creative organism to assist humanity. And that's why ayahuasca is maybe, and other plant medicines are spreading at a rapid rate, versus this other very real aspect, or this idea that humans propagating this vine or these plants, and they're weaving and winding, spreading throughout the globe in a very rapid rate, it's because of perhaps the not so virtuous quality of greed, which is perhaps a cultivated byproduct of the Western capitalist, consumerist, technological world and mindset that we've created. But more and more people are clearly being drawn to the plant medicines, whether it's ayahuasca or wachuma or iboga, whatever else. And of course, there are so many threads to explore here when we're talking about choosing your facilitator or your shaman wisely, or the right questions to ask, or preparation, integration, all that stuff. But one of the things that I wanted to narrow down on is this quote that you had, and I've got it here. And the quote is, "Before embarking on this medicine path, you should invest time to learn and experience working with spirit." And I think this is an important suggestion, and it ties into everything we're talking about. So I'd love for you to maybe tease apart a little bit more how people interested in the shamanic path can invest more time into learning more and experience working and connecting with spirit before maybe going off and diving into the deep end of plant medicine.
Well, I think it's incredibly important because the shamanic indigenous culture is a poetry-based language. It's a language of symbols and metaphors. It's a language of that see the world in a totally different, non-linear way. And it's also a language that recognizes that there are other entities in the universe. And I always start with this idea that humans as an animal is quite primitive animal compared to, let's say, to bees or to dogs and cats or other animals. You know, you can give a whole list of that. And I'm not talking about the brain, the mind. I'm talking about our capacity to see or hear or smell. Because we have a very limited eyesight and very little of smell or hearing. And so because of this limitation, we can't see spirit. Because the way I look at that is spirit is energy entities that are all around us. They are not something that invisible. Well, no, well, it's invisible to humans, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a physicality, because every energy is physical. And even us, you know, we are just a physical manifestation of some energy construct of atoms and molecules and all that are come together. But in that particular constitution. So the way I see it, the spirit are real in a different constitution of energy that most people not trained to see it don't recognize. And so it could be frightening for people when they are entering into plant medicine to see. And indigenous cultures, they start educating their children very early on. You know, you could see children at the age of 5 or 6 or 8 already drinking ayahuasca. And it not a lot, but what they do is they let them experience the world slowly. It's step by step by step. And when they become adult, of course, it's obvious for them. It's very natural. But if you take people who never done that before, and you throw them into the jungle, and they do this, they don't have the tools to understand that. They don't understand what it means if they are seeing themselves standing on the edge of a cliff and jumping and flying like an eagle. They just don't. And if they think about, if they want to manifest their visions, they may go into the cliff and just jump and think that they can fly. They're not. It's not talking about it. It's talking about the ability to conquer fear, to open your wings and whatever. That's where the poetry becomes. And that's why I think it is very important for people who are running into the jungles or other basements in Brooklyn to do ayahuasca, to spend some time, read, learn, experience, drum, do other things so they can develop that ability to live in these two worlds, the worlds of the what we call seen and world of the unseen, to understand the significance of each color, what's the symbolic of each color, the vibrations of each color, the vibrations of mountains or forests or trees, Or what's the meaning of a snake? What is the meaning of the condor? What is the meaning of a jaguar? So that education is to me, it's incredibly necessary. Now, I want to say that the rapid spread of this plant medicine come from the way I see it. It comes from the simple word which I wrote about. It's the greed or the lack of. So Western civilization, like I said, from the Industrial Revolution, kind of disconnected from nature. So disconnected from nature create emptiness. And so this emptiness was about connecting to something else, like Jesus, like, all this religious stuff. And we know in the recent years, we have less and less people who are consider themselves religious from the major religions. People are running away from it because they are disappointed. They can see what it did. So religious is about separation. It's about, I'm not like you. It's about, I am better than you. I have a better God than you have. So it's about separation. It's about wars. It's about destruction. With all of those beautiful things that they're talking about, love and all that, the religious itself is corrupt. The governments are corrupt. The institutions are corrupt. No, people don't know what to believe in. So the beauty of it is that people start to realize that what they can is the connection to nature. So this is an emptiness. There is a quest to something that is bigger, but it's not attainable because we don't have the connection. So we are looking for it. We are starving for it. So it comes from scarcity. We don't have the tools. And at the same time, we have the shamans of the Amazon that are doing these ceremonies for thousands of years and never thought anything about it. It's all about healing. It's all about getting in touch with spirit to find out where the animals are for hunting. It's all about finding relatives in the forest when they get lost. It was a sacred tool and a healing tool. All of the sudden, because of the prophecy of the eagle and the condor, they feel obliged to share this wisdom with people, and they saw that people from the West coming down there in droves, and they are willing to pay money. And money is poison. So they started to figure out that they can make money. And because hunting is, I'm dealing with it now I'm learning about that a lot in the Sequoia people, that hunting is no longer feasible because there's not enough animals anymore to feed them. There's no enough fish in the river because other people coming and poisoning the fish. So they have to rely more on money. And so they have scarcity, and they have physical scarcity, and we have emotional, spiritual scarcity. And then one feed the other. And so I'm saying that, yes, maybe ayahuasca spirit wants to spread around the world, but the reason why it's not healthy. And the people who are using it are not using it in a sacred way. And they charge so much money that a shaman who lives in the Amazon can go on a European tour and come back with $40,000-$50,000 in his pocket cash, and he lives in the middle of the jungle. What does he do with it? So it breaks the infrastructure, the social infrastructure of tribes. It makes people rich and poor. It makes them jealousy, and jealousy is a big thing in indigenous cultures. Envy, jealousy. And if they don't give it back to the community, if they just hoard it for themselves, if they buy a car or if they buy cows and cut the forest, these are all examples that I know of, or they buy pieces of land and they, whatever it is, it breaks down the socioeconomic structure of a tribal, and it brings basically it cuts the branch that the community was sitting on in order to satisfy the emptiness of the Western people. And the thing that what where it's so not understood by the people who are running to all of those plant medicine is, if you don't do the work to learn to use to work with spirit, understand their meaning, the messages that you receive from the ayahuasca or other plant medicine, and you keep on doing it, and you pay hundreds of dollars for event like these, you're enriching the shamans, and you don't really ask the shamans what they do with it. They don't have responsibility. One of the shamans that I work with in the Rio Negro in Brazil, he bought himself a tourist, like a big tourist boat, because he was taking groups, and he had a Rolex watch, because Rolex watch is a status symbol, and so he have a house. I mean, they enriching themselves. They're becoming industrialized. They mimicking our empty culture. And instead of us learning from them, we are teaching them the worst thing that we can: greed, emptiness, the value of money. And so I'm really sorry that a lot of people don't talk about that, don't talk about what the price of real cup of ayahuasca. Because the price is not what you pay. The price is what happened with that money, that you are enabled those shamans to destroy their community. And for what? There are some people who are doing 80 ceremonies every other weekend, every month, like 80 times. The first thing that two people who are doing ayahuasca in this community, they ask is, how many ceremonies did you do? I mean, this is kind of like
it's like the Rolex status symbol.
Exactly, like what is it? It's crazy. So instead of asking, the other question is, what did you learn from it? What did you actually manifested from your vision? What did you do differently after your first, second journey? Why do you need to do so many? Are you running away from something? I know for myself, I did the first journey in 1997, and I still work on the same vision. So those visions, talk about being sacred, those visions are sacred. And for those people who are doing it over and over again, they just don't understand what sacred means. And that sacred mean is that, for me, is to open your heart, listen to the vision or messages that you receive, interpret them, and do the work. Because if you don't listen to spirit, why do you want to go back? It's not going to change the results. You're not going to become a better person. You have to commit yourself to the teaching of that plant. For spirit should not be waste their energy of teaching you if you don't want to learn. It's not about feeling good about yourself. And it's not about wasting your money or corrupting the shamans. It's really, to me, if you talk about sacredness, that is sacredness, is to really hold it sacred. That when spirit come to you, you do everything you can to learn and to manifest it, to change your life, to change your community life.
Yes, thank you for sharing all of that, Itzhak. There are certainly so many important considerations there, and something that I've noticed, and I notice this in the external because I've certainly come to notice it on the internal based on my earlier days of exploring this path, is that there is a superficiality to shamanism and to spirituality because it's like there's an allure to other traditions, and especially traditions that might allow for the expansion of consciousness with all of the vibrant kaleidoscopic geometric patterns and the colorfulness, and it's got this shimmer to it because maybe we sense that there's something there that we don't have because of that emptiness that you're talking about. So, but oftentimes there's this superficiality. It doesn't give rise to the depth that can be found within these traditions and within shamanism. People see shamanism, especially these days with the blossoming of plant medicine, they just associate plant medicine or ayahuasca with shamanism, not recognizing that shamanism spans every single indigenous or nature-based community around the globe. And at the core of many of different shamanic traditions, one of the central techniques for inducing these non-ordinary states may not even be plant medicines. It could be the trance dance or the drumming or the fasting, whatever it is. So I mean, there's this I keep using the word superficial connection to spirit. And a question that's coming up for me now then to ask you, and it's kind of taking a slight deviation but kind of similar theme, is when it comes to developing maybe our intuitive capabilities, maybe, or shamanic skills in a sense, or maybe even psychic capacity to deepen our connection with the energetic realms, or maybe the spirit world, the non-physicality that you're speaking about. What techniques and tools have been of most assistance to yourself on the journey? And maybe what do you typically suggest to others on the path that are looking to develop more similar skills or capabilities, or just this richer connection to spirit that we're talking about?
So there are many different training you can take. You can take many different workshops with many different teachers and experience that through what is called a traditional shamanic journeys with a drum. Going and meeting your spirit guide, your power animals, or spirit of nature, or spirit in the upper world, visiting the old world. You can do that. You can learn how to do that, and you can learn how to interpret the visions. Because one of the things that is so important is the integration part. It's not just to see, but to really understand what did you see, what the symbolism that, and then how to integrate it into your life. The integration part is missing. It's missing in plant medicine. It is missing in a lot of the shamanic teachings. So you can do that. One of the training of to really understand what shamanism is, and I can tell you that like it's almost like in a joke in a way, is to take a seed and plant it in the ground, in the soil, and take care of it, grow it, make it, see how much commitment you have to the soil, to the water, to the plants, and when it grows, to tend to it, love it, sing to it, talk to it, create relationship with that. And I always tell the people that, like people in New York, and it says, oh, you know what? Well, actually, that was one of the things that Alberto, that wise guy in shaman in Ecuador, told me. Because I told him, for you, it's really easy, right? Because you live in Ecuador on the mountain in the Andes. You have all these plants and you have all these mountains. You get all this wisdom right there. And he looked at me and he said, don't you think that the sidewalks in New York and the building and the cars have spirit? It was like, woo! I said, what? And I realized that we are idolizing, the spiritual side. But the spiritual side is right here with your microphone, with your drum, with your electric switch. It has spirit. Speak to them. But one of the way to become spiritual is to be grounded. This is actually the most important thing. And when you plant a tree, or when you plant a seed and you are taking care of it, it's like a child. You learn to be responsible for the community, responsible, consistent, to have intention. That's the training. The other way of training is spend a week or whatever time rediscovering what the quality of water. Swim, drink, touch, wash. What is it, the essence of water? And then spend another week. What is the essence of fire? And learn. Experiment with fire. So you become intimate with fire. And then you do a week with the air. What is air? How it is air? What is it? And then you do a week with the earth, with the four elements. And when you are connected to all four elements, you get into the fifth element, which is the Ushai. It is the combination. It is the essence of all four come together at one. And then I think you can go and do plant medicine. Because when you are truly understand the essence of water in your body, the essence of air in your head, the fire in your passion, right? And the earth, which is the root, the connection to your ancestors, the grounding, the material, the matter, then you can fly. But you can't fly before you are doing the work. You can't fly if you don't understand intimately what's the essence of all those four elements. The four elements and the four directions, the east, the south, the north, and the west. What do they mean? What is it to mean the direction of the center, direction of your heart? So all of that, if you're doing this work and you go and you do plant medicine and you see a vision, you ask yourself, in what element are we in? Where is it come from? Is it my center? Do I see it in my center? Do I see it on the right, on the masculine side, or on the left, on the feminine side? So you have a concept to hold those visions, and you could bring them into manifestation. That is what a shamanic work is. And I really like also what you said, that plant medicine is just a small little branch of shamanism. It's not what shamanism is, It's just one tool that shamans use. But they dance, they sing, they do all of those ceremonies that are done in China, in the East, in the West, in the North. Plant medicine is just one way. And I think that we have to really be very conscious of that we don't associate plant medicine that come from Peru as a true shamanism or only shamanism. It's a valid place. It's a valid it has a valid place or valid practice, but it's not all. Actually, I think that in my teaching, I do I do ceremonies with another plant, which is Wayusa. And Wayusa is a tea that comes from the Amazon, but it doesn't have the same effect that all the other plants do. And the vision that people get out of that is way more, well, I would say way more, but at least as strong and powerful and teachable than ayahuasca. But the real work of shaman, and I want to quote my teacher, Don José Joaquin Pinéda from Ecuador, is to use your mind. We have our own DMT in our brain, and that is what we need to access. We need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time, to walk and access the DMT. So when I looked at you, I can also access the DMT in my mind, so I can actually see the spirit around us. So I'm not relying on an outside force. I'm developing the ability or expanding the ability, because each of us has this ability. We are all shamans. We all have that, what it takes to be a shaman. But some of us don't develop it. So the training here is to develop the ability to be in two worlds at the same time, to be in the unseen, whatever we call unseen world, and the seen world at the same time. And that ability give a shaman the ability to see the world from with the conscious awareness and intention. And that is the important part, is to develop your own ability to vision and integrate it into your life. And I also want to say that we receive so many messages from spirits during the day and during the night, in daydreams and also at night. And a lot of people dismiss that. They think that it's just dreams, but it is also important to pay attention to the dreams, and if those dreams are important, to act on them and manifest them.
Yeah, well, speaking about John Lockley just before, that's such a large part of his work and the lineage that he's part of, the Xhosa of South Africa, dreaming. And of course, dreaming, talking about other shamanic techniques and ways of learning. That's such a large part of it, is reconnecting to, or connecting to soul through the dreamscapes.
Yeah, so the important part is to, I can, shamanic teaching, you do it through stories. So I'll tell you a little story. So I basically many times follow the dreams that they experience. So I was going to Chile, and I made an appointment to go and visit a woman Mapuche, Machi, a shaman, because all the women, all the shamans in Mapuche traditions are women. So I made an appointment with her, but like a week before I went on going on a plane, I had this dream that a man showed up. And he said, "I'm waiting for you. Come." And I said, "Who are you?" He says, "Well, my name is Don Jose." And I said, "But how would I find you?" And he said, "Oh, you'll find me." And I said, "But how?" So I went to Chile. I canceled the appointment with that woman shaman because the dream told me. And a taxi driver told us, if you go to the place where we went to, and you are interested in shamanism, go meet Don Jose.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, "But how would I find him?" He says, "Well, the first person that you see, ask him." So I went, And the first hosteria, we just got off the bus, opened the door, and there was a guy there. So I asked him, do you know Don Jose? And he said, of course. And I met him. Now, it's very rare that you have a male shaman in Pucón, you know, that place. It's rare because most of them are women. But that guy showed up, and I went and visited him. If I just thought that this is just a fluke, it's just my dream. You know, another time, before my first trips to Ecuador, I was dreaming that the person who was our tour guide, I was dreaming the house of the shaman, and it's all manifested. I was dreaming that my teacher, who passed away years ago, gave me instructions how to do candle reading, and it all materialized. So you know, there's our antennas, when they open, they need to be paid attention to, and you need to manifest them. You have to show spirit that they are sacred, that you respect them, that you listen to them. Because if you don't, then nothing is sacred.
I'm thinking about how we live in a time where many people don't necessarily have that access to elders or teachers in person that can help facilitate the blossoming of the exploration of this path, maybe in context of how we or people might have within indigenous or traditional contexts. And sure, yeah, we have things like the internet, and that level of interconnectivity has been such a blessing in so many different ways. So we have to take that into account too when we're, I guess, talking about seeking out mentors or apprenticeships or teachers or whatever it is. But, you know, travel isn't necessarily a luxury or a privilege for many that do feel the call to deepen into, in this context, the shamanic path and shamanic teachings. So finding a mentor or an apprenticeship and knowing where to start can be difficult. And of course, we're talking about tuning into our sensory antenna as they start to develop, and tuning into our dreams, whether waking dreams or sleeping dreams or the visions that we might have. But what words might you share with the community for those that are looking to seek out trainings or teachings or apprenticeships or mentors?
Well, I can tell you my own personal experience. You know, when I started to do this work, I never really wanted to do this work. It wasn't something that I thought that I want to, first of all, that I have any talent in. I thought that shamans is something way above anything that I'm capable of. And if it wasn't, so when I went to Ecuador and I met that shaman, Don José Joaquin Pinéda, who was totally by mistake. We were not supposed to meet him, but for some reason, that's how it happened. I had this incredible experience, and I wanted to experience it again because I had this incredible vision. So I came back later, and I had another vision as he was doing limpia, and he insisted that I would do this kind of work, and I poo-pooed him for 3 years. I mean, I really didn't want to do that because it's really dangerous and it's very hard. And but he was very insistent. But what I did do, I really felt a lot of gratitude, and I really felt I could see the magic, not the magic as a magician, but the beauty, and I can also see how valuable and it is for the client that comes to work with him. And that is what was so amazing to me, that these ceremonies, that healing ceremonies that he does, are so powerful and useful I never thought that I can do that, but I wanted to serve it. And I think that that's one of the things that I'm getting to. A lot of people wants to become apprentice, or they want to be students, but they don't want to serve. And I think part of being apprentice, that's where the word come from, is to be a servant, not servitude, but service the shaman, to help the shaman in his everyday life and in the healing. And that's how you learn, really. So a lot of people want to come to one class or two classes, and they call themselves shaman because they took shamanic classes, but they don't want to do the work. They don't want to organize, teach, help the teaching, to be involved in that. And I'm sure you know that there's a big word with the shaman is that the whole idea of family. You have to become a family with the shaman, intimately involved with the shaman, because a lot of the teaching that I got were in the informal meetings with them, during lunch, during dinner, on a walk, with the family members. It wasn't just that I was sitting and learning in classes. I'm not very good at doing this kind of stuff. But it's more experiential. So I was, apprenticing with him for 3 years. I was sitting behind his back on, almost every weekend doing healing work for hundreds and hundreds of people. So I've seen, I learned it through that. Now I know that not every person could be lucky like me. I recognize that, but it is about intention and long vision. It's not about a miracle that will happen, and it's about um, sticking into it and having intention and clarity that this is what you want to do. But I also want to say that the shamans that I know, none of them work full time in being shaman. They all work in different jobs, and it's very important for Western people to know that the shamanic healing should not be your only source of income, or any healers actually should not be the only source of income. It should be done on a part-time way, because you don't want to be tied up or dependent on the money that you get from healing, because you're going to change the way you do healing. Because you can't be dependent on your clients, on the money, because then your healing will be corrupted. Mm-hmm. So you want to keep a source of income that is outside of it. So some of the shamans that I worked with, they were teachers, they were grass cutters, they were carpenters, they were saw keepers, who knows what. But they do that at the same time that they do the healing work. And there is no less honor in doing that. It's very important to understand. So what I recommend for people to do is to find a teacher that they like, that is honorable, and do not put them on pedestal. Recognize their fault, recognize their human part of them, which is something that many people don't do. They kind of like idealizing one person, but once you see that this is the person you want, stick by it. Show that you are interested in it. Follow. It is up to you. It's not up to the shaman to coerce you into doing it, and really show your intention by giving yourself into it.
Well, there might be listeners and viewers tuning into us talking, Itzhak, that would be interested in coming to learn from you. So the obvious question is, what projects or courses or offerings have you got going at the moment?
Well, I do ongoing project all the time, especially now that everything is Zoom. So I do a lot of work independently. I mostly I do the apprenticeship program now is in the form of Zoom with the New York Open Center, so they can go there and find out, or go to my website and see what my offering are, um, establishing a school is not something that is calling me.
Mm-hmm.
uh, um, I think I never found the person to organize it for me, so I can just do that maybe. But I'm not in that. So I never built organization to teach, but I teach different courses at different times, and I take people to do work in the Andes of Ecuador and the Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So I do trips like that to Ecuador and Mexico or Yucatan, and then I do a yearly project, which is I think it's a beautiful thing. It's about it's called the Andes Summit, which I bring people together for 9 days in the high Andes of Ecuador to work with 10 of my teachers, the best teachers that I know of, and we hang out in for 9 days in one big beautiful hosteria, and they teach. 3 days they teach, 3 days they do healing, personal healing, and then we participate in the Inti Raymi, which is the solstice, and we do other ceremonies all nights, and we do plant medicine, and we do other, and we do trips. And so the idea is to bring them into the country where the medicine come from, not to bring the shamans to their country, but for us to come and visit the mountains, which is very, very important. So I do that, and now especially because um, because of the Zoom teaching, I have teachers students from all over the world, so it's easier. I was talking with some people who came to the Andy Summit who are from Australia, who wanted me to come there to teach a longer courses because it's a long flight. But so, these kind of things are possible, and that's what I do from time to time. I teach quite a lot in different countries in Europe and Israel and other places. So, but I'm not the only one. There's plenty of shamanic teachers that are wonderful teachers, and each person has a different sensibility, that are different, and you want to experience different teachers and see which one really talk to you, or what the teaching speaks to you, and that is very important. But I also want to say something about lineage. I'm sure that John luckily spoke about that too, because we don't have that tradition, because we were cut off from it. But part of what gives me energy and power is the lineage that I have with my teachers, because I kind of rely on their tradition and teachings, which is, I think, that is important. I don't necessarily just receive messages from spirit and just do whatever comes out, because I really respect the tradition that I was initiated into, which is a great honor. So I was initiated in the Andes tradition by my teacher, but I also with the Kanamari tradition in the Rio Negro area in Brazil. So both traditions are very important for me. It's like in my DNA in a way. So when I teach it as an ambassador of those traditions. Although I take it, I make it my own, but it comes from that knowing, from that grounding. And so what I'm saying is that when you are choosing a teacher, you want to know what the lineage, what do they bring in? And then if that lineage speak to you, if that's what you feel comfortable with, then it is very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was something else that you mentioned in the same article that we were speaking about before, and you were talking about something about the people who administer plant medicines, whether they're a shaman or an ayahuasquero or a bartender or something like that. There's a difference. And then you said a real shaman has a lineage, and I comprehend it within that context. But then I was thinking, well, that's probably the norm and probably more of the significant percentage of well-renowned or powerful shamanic practitioners or shamans do have that lineage. But then I thought, well, I'm pretty sure I remember Eliade talking in his textbook, Shamanism, Archaic Techniques of Ecstasy, that it's not unheard of for people to receive shamanic training without that human-to-human transmission or interaction, coming to learn directly from nature or from spirit. But I guess that is more on the uncommon side of things.
Well, there are, I know a shaman in the Shuar tradition in the jungle. And he received his training directly from spirit. But he went to, part of his training was he went to the waterfall, the sacred waterfall, and he consumed the ayahuasca and stayed there for a week. That was the test of spirit to see if he's real shaman or not, because otherwise the jaguar will eat him and other spirit will eat them. And so when he came back and the tribe saw him returning after all that experience alive, that means that spirit spoken to him and he received the arutam, which is the power. But he was steeped in their tradition. He already knew the tradition. That was in his DNA. It wasn't like totally strange. And I think that because we in the Western world are so disconnected, so not familiar with that spirit world, that I think that it helps, at least for me, to get the support of this indigenous grounding. And I have to tell you, because the funny thing about all of that is that my teacher, who's from Ecuador, from the Andes, and it very much reminded me of my father and the mountains I grew up in Israel. So when I came there, I had this feeling of past life or experience that I was there before. It's like my home. I knew it. But my great-grandfather, a person that I only saw him once or twice before he passed away, he was a Kabbalistic rabbi and a healer in Poland. And I don't follow this lineage, although I'm making closer steps to it. But I follow something else, but I know that there is this lineage that is there. So it's not a coincidence of what I do. I thought it's a coincidence because I didn't have the big picture. But that relying on that other tradition or other lineage helped me to own that lineage that I came from my great-grandfather.
Yeah, cultural context are the two words that come to mind. Yeah, it was only recently actually that I found out that my great-grandmother on my Filipino side was an indigenous healer. And she actually passed some of that knowledge down to my Lola, which is my grandmother. But she's still around today, but she lives over in the United States now. And while my mum has a connection with her, she doesn't speak that much English. So we don't have that much of a connection, and she doesn't remember much about the healing techniques and practices that were passed on to her by her mother. But it's through learning this that I've kind of seen the synchronous nature of it's kind of skipping a generation and starting to bubble out and flow through me. So I feel that I might be still at the very beginning stages of moving closer towards what my lolas or my great lolas were practicing in the Filipino tradition. And maybe I will never go down that path fully, but at least it might in time start to provide more cultural context for which I build the rest of this path forward for myself.
Well, you may want to explore it. I have a person now that I'm doing, I'm taking care of, who is in his 70s, and he had a possession, attachment, spirit calling him and speaking and torturing him. And I do that healing from afar, right, from distance. And in that vision that I had was that his mother and his grandmother, they were voodoo priestess. And because he denounced all of that and he became a mathematician and physicist professor, they came here to tell him that he had to go back into his roots. And so they torture him. And guess what? So now we're doing all these ceremonies. So I told him to do all the ceremonies so he can heal. He didn't sleep for 7 months. So after the healing I did for him, he slept for the whole day. So now he believes in that. So now he's start to reconnect with his grandmother, to own the connection. I'm not saying that it's going to happen to you, but I'm saying is that there are people, and I think that that's what happened to me in a way, that my midlife crisis happened to bring me back into the fold with my ancestors. But those DNA connection or spiritual connection are real. And we think that we have free choice in many ways, but we kind of like not puppet, but we have choice. But and I've seen it a few times already with my clients who refuse to take the path, and it brought them into nervous breakdown and to attachment, possession. I had once a woman from the islands who came, and when she opened the door, there were like 3 other women in spirit around her. And so I was like, and I said, so who are you? And she says, oh, we are her family. And I says, what are you doing here? She says, well, she refused to do the work, so we had to bring her in. And they were laughing. They were like, it was like a joke. I mean, this woman suffered, like really suffered. She's so spirit. She was, she had all the thing of possession, but she wasn't really possessed. She was pushed by spirit to come to me so I can tell her that she had to be a witch, that she would have to be a healer. And so I sat her on the sofa and I told her, you know, there are these 3 women. And she says, I know them. I says, what do you mean you know them? I know, they push me all the time. And I says, but they tell me that you have to do the work. She says, I'm not going to do the work. I says, well, if you don't do the work, that's what happens. Well, she actually did the work. I mean, it was really a very difficult depossession session. We had 3 different ones, and it was just like incredible, difficult process. But at the end, she realized that if she's not going to take it, if she was a very famous singer, so she thought that she doesn't have to do that. But basically what she was doing is that she was communicating with spirit, when she was singing. But she needed to follow her ancestors. And if they don't do, that's what they do. They send you to another person who can give you the message. And maybe I am one of you.
Are you inside my mind, Itzhak?
Well, did I tell you that I'm always in two realities at the same time?
You did say
So,
that.
so yes. So that person now that I'm working with from Haiti, he's in his 70s, and the walls of protection is falling apart, and he's now allowing those spirit to speak through him. So he started to see spirit, and it all came from his mother. And from sometimes you see the ancestral lineage. So you are from yours is from your mother, grandmother, from the feminine energy of your family, and that is the calling.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a beautiful way of so I'm not just talking about you. I think that it's talking for the question that you were asking about how to follow a teacher, is to see what calls you, what speaks to you, and when you feel that connection and you resist it, to ask yourself, what are you resisting?
Mm-hmm.
What are you afraid of or protecting from becoming?
Mm-hmm.
But it's usually start a little late, in the 40s, like when you get too close to the 40s, and so that's just on the right time.
Mm. Yeah, I'm kind of laughing because you're not saying that, on a personal level for a moment. You're not saying anything that I'm not already familiar with, but the stories that you are sharing and much of what you're saying is confirmation of part of my path as well. I've had what you might consider classic initiatory sickness, and to some degree, I still feel like I dip my toes in that. I'm still kind of weaving my way out of there, but I was bedridden with hot and cold fevers for almost a year. That was back in 2012, and the remnants of that continued on. And it wasn't until I started deepening into this path where things started alleviating to some degree. And even now, I've had moments where I have been drawn away from quote unquote the path, where it's just whatever, getting distracted and not praying as often, not singing, not dancing, all these things. And again, you call it the spirit world, call it whatever you want. I get tormented with illness or with ailments. And I know very clearly there's signs. Come back on the path. You're not on the path. Return. So.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's no coincidence, There's really no coincidence. It's and like people think that the spirit world is separate from our reality. It's not so. They are all around us all the time. Yes, they are not in it's not in the visible body, but they are physical, and they are around us. They are pushing us. They are doing things that sometimes, like sometimes you think that where these thoughts came from, it doesn't generate from you. You just like the antenna that the receiver received it. So when you start to realize that, you become maybe disillusioned that you have any kind of saying about your world, but on the other hand, you are connected to the spirit world, and you can start working with it. You can be part of that. I can tell you stories like that. Like a woman who came to me for healing, and I was doing limpia, and all of a sudden there was her father, her mother, and two sisters, and one sister was wearing these white. She was totally in white, and I was asking them. They were not physical. They came in spirit, And I says, what are you doing here? And she says, oh, we came here to tell this your that girl that we miss her and we love her so much. So I stopped the session and I told her, I don't know, but this is your father and your mother, and I described them. And it's, yeah, that's my parents. And I says, but I don't understand why your other sister, the young sister, she's wearing all white. And she said, well, today is the graduation from nursing school.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
So they came at that moment to tell that the missing girl that she was in New York and they were in LA, that they miss her and they love her. Mm. So these spirits are all around us, the living and the dead. And
that's certainly my truth.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
But you see, most people will think that this is just your imaginations. But what I'm saying is that when you are living in these two worlds, you want to qualify that. You want to make sure that it's true. Like when you have a dream that is important dream, go and find out and make sure that it's true. And the more you do that, the more you have visions that are you can verify, the more the confidence that you have that what you see is true. I had a very few visions that they were not true. But you know, sometimes I call people because I had this vision, and they will tell you, no, I don't have that. So it's okay. But most of them are absolutely true, and you'll get used to it. You'll get used to the idea that you are a seer, and you can use it for the benefit of other people. And which is a thing that is very important, because a lot of people call me or write me and they tell me all the stories that they see, which is nice. It's absolutely wonderful. But the bigger question is, what do you do with it? Because at the end, all the shamanic work, all the spiritual work, all of those things that we talked about, they really have to be manifested. They have to be grounded. They have to bring results. And they also have to make other people's life better, which is what the shamanic work is about. It's not just about plant medicine. It's not about vision. It's not about making yourself feeling good temporarily. It's really about how do you make the world a better place for you, for your children, for your wife, for your family, for other people. It has to be materialized. You know, there's a very important saying in the shamanic teaching that if you don't grow corn, don't do it. If it doesn't grow corn, you just don't do that. It has to be manifested, and it has to feed other people. It has to take care of the well-being of other people, because at the end, the word shaman which come from the Tungus, is about keeper of the fire, the person that keeps other people's well-being. It's not about you. It's about how you apply yourself to help other people.
Well
The
said.
well-being of the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautifully said. Well, what do you reckon? This might be a good place to wrap things up, Itzhak. It's been a very pleasurable talk for myself. And hopefully for you too.
It was a pleasure to meet you too. I have a very strong fondness to the Philippine culture. So and I think that it will be very important to discover that.
I feel those threads within. Yes, I do. And they're bubbling up in good time. Yeah. Well, let's formally wrap things up then.
Okay.
Let's say, well, just want to say thanks. Thanks for joining me on Birdsong. What a pleasure to connect. And I appreciate you and the work that you're doing and all that you are sharing with the world, and for gifting your time here today and your knowledge and your wisdom. So maybe as we wrap things up, do you have any final reflections or musings or insights or brief words of wisdom or encouragement that you want to leave us all with?
Well, I will end up with the words of my teacher, Ipupiara, who is a Brazilian teacher from the Uruhuababu tribe, which is the people from the stars. And so they believe that we came from the stars to teach people on Earth how to protect the Earth. And in their tradition, every person is a shaman. Every person dream. Every person know how to heal, which is to hug, to sing, to kiss, to make tea, to make other people feel better. And every person have visions and dreams. So the idea here is that we are all shamans and we are all healers. Not everybody has to do it for full-time or part-time job. That's come with a calling. But what I really like to say, or toward the end, is that we all have to take responsibility that we are all shamans and healers. And we have to act responsibility to each other. And it's not going to be done by other people. It has to be done by you. So becoming a shaman, if anybody wants to be a shaman, is a great responsibility. It's not just an honor. It's not just another thing you do. It's a full-time responsibility, not for yourself. I mean, for yourself with the way you behave, but it's about other people's life. How do you make the society and the earth a better place for the next generations? It was a pleasure to meet you and to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise, Itzhak. Okay. All right, well, let's leave it at that. To all our listeners and viewers, the resources and links mentioned throughout our conversation can be found over at the show notes to this episode, which is medicinepath.net/birdsong, or you can just head straight over to Itzhak's website, which is that's just itzhakbeery.com, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, but I'll have the links to all of this in the show notes, and where people can check out your books and the other podcasts and all the great stuff that you've put out online. So let's leave it at that. Many thanks once again.
Thank you.